Hi there, welcome to my YouTube channel Dhyani classes. If you are watching my video for the first time, do subscribe my channel, hit the bell icon so that I get notified whenever new video will be uploaded. So in today's video we will cover the second part of the chapter, the third level, written by Jack Finney from classes 12 CBSE. So let's get started. So in the first part of the chapter we have seen how Charlie got into a tunnel about a mile long and landed in the lobby of Roosevelt Hotel and then an office building of 46th Street that was 3 blocks away, and felt that there are secret underpasses below the city and this third level of the Grand Central Station is the best place to escape. So let's begin with the second part of the chapter now. Further he says, but I never told my psychiatrist friend about that idea. So here Charlie is saying that he didn't inform anything to his psychiatrist friend that there is a secret underground tunnel and it is growing like a tree. So whatever thought was coming in his mind on an underground tunnel, he didn't reveal to him and never wanted to let him know about this long tunnel. The corridor I was in began angling left and slanting downward, and I thought that was wrong, but I kept on walking. So again he started walking and he saw this tunnel angling left and then slanting downwards. That means tunnel turning left and then going downward, but he thought he was thinking wrong, or whatever he is seeing is wrong. Then he continued his walk. Further he says, all I could hear was the empty sound of my own footsteps and I didn't pass a soul. That means whatever noise he was hearing at that time, it was the empty sound of my own footsteps. That means he was able to hear the sound of his own footsteps while walking, and says I didn't pass a soul. That means at that time he was the only one in that corridor. Then I heard that sort of hollow roar ahead, that means open space and people talking. So after walking for some time he heard some sort of sound and got to know that ahead of him there is an open space where people are talking. So what do you mean by hollow roar? That means a hollow sound is low sound, like something empty being hit. The tunnel turned sharp left. I went down a short flight of a stair and came out on the third level at Grand Central Station. So here Charlie says that he was walking alone and there was a sharp turn in front of him, and then he took a sharp turn and then went down through the stairs and came out on the third level at Grand Central Station. So finally he reached the third level. So what do you mean by short flight of stairs? That means a walk of stairs that has been 13 to 15 steps. For just a moment I thought I was back on the second level, but I saw the room was smaller. So here when he reached the third level, again he feels he came back on the second level because everything looked like same, but I saw the room was smaller. That means he realized that this place was smaller as compared to the second level, and says there were fewer ticket windows and train gates, and the information booth in the center was wood and old looking. That means he got to know that he has reached the third level because there were few ticket windows and train gates as compared to the second level. And another thing he was noticing that there was a information booth was very old and it was made of wooden, and the man in the booth wore a green eye shade and long black sleeve protectors. So here he says that there was a man in the booth and he wore a green eye shade and long black sleeve protectors. That means he wore green glasses to protect his eyes and wore black sleeve protectors to protect his skin. Further he says the lights were dim and sort of flickering. Then I saw why. They were open flame gas lights. So here he says that there were lights, but it was very dim and continuously flickering. That means the light was moving irregularly, and says then I saw why. They were open flame gas lights. That means he understood why the lights were flickering and dim, just because of there were open flame gas lights, and due to this lights were dim and flickering continuously. There were brass spit-ons on the floor, and across the station a glint of light caught my eye. A man was pulling a gold watch from his vest pocket. So here he says that he saw some brass spit-ons on the floor which is used for spitting into, and across the station a glint of light caught my eye. That means he saw something there and that was not visible because lights were dim and flickering. And what he saw a man was pulling a gold watch from his vest pocket. That means he saw a man was standing there and he was pulling out his watch from his vest pocket. So in 1950s, people used to keep pocket watch as compared to nowadays. So brass spittoons refers to a bowl or other containers that is made for spitting into and used in the 19th and 20th century. He snapped open the cover, glanced at his watch and frowned. So here he says that he saw a man standing there. He took out his watch from his pocket and pulled out its cover and looked at the time, and then he got annoyed and tensed. So snapped means separate and glanced means peeped. So he wore a derby hat, a black 4-button suit with tiny lapels, and he had a big black handlebar mustache. So here Charlie describes the man's appearance, that he wore a derby hat. That means he wore a round hat with 4-button black coat with tiny folded flap on it, and he had a big black handlebar mustache. So handlebar mustache refers to a wide thick mustache with the ends curving slightly downwards. Then I looked around and saw that everyone in the station was dressed like 1890 something. So he says that he looked around and there were a lot of people surrounding him, and everyone in the station was dressed like 1890, and that was very strange for Charlie, and says, I never saw so many beards, sideburns and fancy mustaches in my life. That means he never came across different kinds of beards and sideburns, and especially fancy mustaches in his life. So sideburns refers to a stripe of a hair grown by a man down each side of the face and in front of ears. Further he says a woman walked in through the train gate. She wore a dress with leg of mutton sleeves and skirts to the top of her high buttoned shoes. So here later on he saw a woman walked in through the train gate. That means he saw a woman and she came out from the train gate, and she was wearing a dress with a leg of mutton sleeves and skirts to the top of her high buttoned shoes. That means she wore shoes that were made of leather and fabric with a long row of tiny buttons used in the mid to late 1800 centuries. So leg of mutton sleeves refers to a sleeve that is full of loose to the upper arm and fullness around the shoulder, but close fitting on the forearm and wrist. As you can see the picture how it looks like. Further he says, back of her, out of the tracks, I caught a glimpse of a locomotive, a very small Carrier and Ives locomotive with a funnel-shaped stack. So here Charlie is saying that he saw something out of the railway track, just behind of the lady he saw. And what was that? That I caught a glimpse of a locomotive. That means he saw a self-propelled train, and it was very small Carrier and Ives with a funnel-shaped stack. That means it was very old-fashioned train used in 1835 with a big smokestack or chimney to release smoke or steam. So this locomotive train was used for pulling railroad machines. And then I knew, to make sure, I walked over to a newsboy and glanced at the stack of papers at his feet. So here Charlie had some doubt in his mind, and then he walked over to a boy who was selling newspapers and looked at the pile or heap of newspapers at his feet that he had, and says, it was the World, and the World hasn't been published for years. So he saw a boy who was selling a newspaper, and Charlie saw the name of the newspaper, that is the World, and he got to know that this newspaper is very old and that was published at end of the 18th century, and this newspaper which was discontinued years ago. The lead story said something about President Cleveland. So here Charlie is saying that he saw a headline, and that headline had a story about President Cleveland. So who is President Cleveland? Stephen Grover Cleveland was an American lawyer and politician, and then he became President of United States of America. Now he is saying, I have found that front page since in the public library files, and it was printed June 11th, 1894. So when he took the newspaper, he got surprised to see it was printed on June 11th, 1894, and this newspaper he found earlier in public library files, and now he was sure that he was living in the 18th century. I turned toward the ticket windows, knowing that here on the third level at Grand Central. So here he was sure that he reached the third level of Grand Central Station and walked toward the ticket window. And further he says, I could buy tickets that would take Lucia and me anywhere in the United States we wanted to go. So when he approached the ticket window and wanted to buy tickets, and would take his wife Lucia with him anywhere in the United States where they wanted to go. In the year 1894, and I wanted 2 tickets to Galesburg, Illinois. So as he knew that he reached the third level at Grand Central Station, and from there he can travel back in time, and that's why he wanted to buy 2 tickets and wanted to take his wife Lucia to Galesburg, Illinois back in the year 1894, and says, have you ever been there? That means he is asking us that have you been to Galesburg, Illinois, where he wanted to go in the year 1894 from the Grand Central Station. Now he is saying it's a wonderful town still, with big old frame houses, huge lawns and tremendous trees whose branches meet overhead and roof the streets. So here he is describing Galesburg, Illinois, that it is very wonderful town with a lot of greenery, and this town had old large frame houses. That means a house constructed from wood and covered with timber boards, and huge lawns, and the house covered with huge branches of the trees, and there are huge trees on the street roads and meets overhead and makes a roof above the street roads. And in 1894, summer evenings were twice as long and people sat out on their lawns, the men smoking cigar and talking quietly. So here he is talking about time back in 1894, that summer evenings were long as compared to nowadays, and people used to sit in the garden in front of the house, and men used to smoke cigars and talk to each other very silently, and the woman waving palm leaves fans with a fireflies all around in a peaceful world. That means lady of the house used to wave palm leaf fans because at that time electric fans were not there, and they were using palm leaf with fireflies all around during dark evening in the summer season, and things were very easy going and people were leading their life very peacefully. To be back there with the First World War still 20 years off and World War II over 40 years in the future. So here he is saying that it was still the World War First and Second to happen, and it was the time before 20 years when First World War to begin, and over 40 years for the Second World War in the future at that point of time. So that's why he is saying that at that time things were very pretty nice and smooth and people leading their life very peacefully. Further he says, I wanted 2 tickets for that. So finally he decided to buy 2 tickets to go Galesburg, Illinois. The clerk figured the fare. He glanced at my fancy hatband, but he figured the fare, and I had enough for 2 coach tickets one way. So here when Charlie asked for 2 tickets to go to Galesburg, Illinois, the clerk started calculating fare for travel, and then he glanced at my fancy hatband. That means the clerk looked at his fancy hatband because he was wearing a very old-fashioned hat, and then again he started calculating the amount, and the Charlie said that he had enough money for 2 coach tickets just for going to Galesburg. But when I counted out the money and looked up, the clerk was staring at me. So Charlie took out the money from his pocket and he started counting money, and says, when I was counting money, the clerk started looking at him very attentively. He nodded at the bills. That ain't money, mister, he said, and if you are trying to skin me, you won't get very far. So here when the clerk saw Charlie was counting money, immediately clerk said, this is not a money, mister, that you are counting, and if you are trying to cheat me, you can't get away from here because I will catch you very soon, because the clerk knows every corner of the third level of the Grand Central Station. And then says he glanced at the cash drawer beside him. That means when the clerk saw money and said, that is not money, mister, then Charlie started seeing the cash drawer beside him. Of course, the money was old style bills, half again as big as the money we use nowadays and different looking. So when the Charlie saw the money that the clerk had, it was quite larger in size and its length was double as compared we use nowadays, and very different looking from the money Charlie had at that time, and got confused. I turned away and got out fast. There is nothing nice about jail even in 1894. So when he saw that the money that was different from the time, he decided to turn back from the ticket counter and move as soon as possible, because he didn't want to go to jail and does not like the feel of jail even in the 18th century when things were very easy and peaceful. And that was that. That means finally he wanted to escape from the third level at the Grand Central Station. So this is the end of the second part of the chapter. Let's look at the third part of the chapter in my next video. For more informative videos, do subscribe my channel, hit the bell icon so that I get notified whenever new video will be uploaded. So thank you so much for watching once again. Stay safe, stay healthy.